It was a cold November evening when Jake Miller saw a little girl standing alone by the side of the road, her tiny hands wrapped around a worn-out teddy bear. Cars passed by without slowing down, and the wind whipped her blonde hair across her tear-streaked face. Jake had no idea that stopping his truck that night would change his life forever, or that the little girl's mother was one of the richest women in the state, hiding a truth that would shake him to his core. Hey everyone, welcome back to TRUTHLINES USA, where we share real, emotional stories that remind us of the power of kindness and humanity. And if you enjoy heartfelt stories like this, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and share your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's get into today's story, one that proves a single act of kindness can lead to miracles you never saw coming. Jake Miller was a single dad from a small town in Missouri. He worked long hours at a local auto repair shop, raising his 7-year-old son, Tommy, after his wife passed away 3 years earlier from cancer. Life wasn't easy, but Jake made sure there was always food on the table and love in the house. Tommy was his reason to keep going, his little buddy who made every hard day worth it. That November evening, Jake was driving home from work, exhausted and thinking about how he could stretch his next paycheck until Christmas. Snowflakes were starting to fall, and the streets were nearly empty. That's when he saw her, a small girl, maybe 6 or 7, standing alone near the intersection. No coat, no adult in sight. Jake slowed his truck and rolled down the window. "Hey there, sweetheart, are you lost?" he called out gently. The girl looked scared but didn't move. She hugged her teddy tighter. "My mommy's gone," she whispered. Jake's heart broke right then. He parked, turned on his hazard lights, and got out. "It's okay," he said softly, kneeling beside her. "We'll find your mom." "What's your name?" "Emily," she said. "Mommy told me to wait here. But she didn't come back." Jake glanced around. No car, no footprints leading anywhere. Just the snow and that trembling child. He could have called the police right away and kept driving. But something inside told him he couldn't just leave her there. He opened the truck door and helped her inside. "Let's get you warm first," he said. At his small home, Jake gave Emily some hot cocoa and one of Tommy's old sweaters. Tommy, curious and kind-hearted, shared his video games and snacks with her. While Emily smiled for the first time that night, Jake called the local sheriff's office to report a missing child. Hours passed, and still no word about her mother. Emily eventually fell asleep on the couch, clutching that teddy bear. Jake looked at her and couldn't help thinking about his late wife, how she always said, "Kindness doesn't need permission." He tucked Emily in with an extra blanket and whispered, "You're safe here, kiddo." The next morning, Jake took Emily to the sheriff's office. They filed a report and sent her picture out to nearby towns. But days went by with no leads. The sheriff suggested keeping her in temporary foster care until they found her mom, but Emily cried and begged not to leave Jake and Tommy. "Please, can I stay with you?" she sobbed. "You feel like home." Jake's heart ached. He knew what the system could be like: cold, overworked, and uncertain. He talked it over with the sheriff, and since he passed background checks and was willing, they allowed Emily to stay with him temporarily. What was supposed to be a few days turned into a week, then 2. Emily started going to school with Tommy. She helped Jake cook breakfast, laughed during movie nights, and brought light back into a house that had felt empty for years. Jake couldn't explain it, but having her around healed something inside him. One snowy Sunday morning, about 3 weeks after he found her, there was a knock at Jake's door. When he opened it, he froze. Standing there was a woman dressed in an elegant coat, her eyes red from crying but sharp and familiar from television and magazines. "Mr. Miller?" she asked softly. "I'm Grace Caldwell, Emily's mother." Jake's stomach dropped. Grace Caldwell, the billionaire CEO of Caldwell Tech, one of the biggest companies in the country. She stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on Emily, who ran into her arms shouting, "Mommy!" Grace burst into tears, holding her daughter tightly. Jake felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief that Emily was safe. Sadness that he'd have to say goodbye, but something about Grace's eyes, the way they softened when she looked at him, told Jake this story wasn't over. Once Emily had gone to play with Tommy in the next room, Grace turned to Jake. "You found her near Route 12, didn't you?" she asked quietly. Jake nodded. "She said you told her to wait there." "What happened?" Grace took a deep breath, trembling. "I didn't tell her to wait there. My car was hijacked that night. I was forced out, and by the time I got help, Emily was gone. The police searched everywhere. I thought I'd lost her forever." Jake's jaw tightened. "That's terrible. But thank God she's safe now." Grace nodded, tears welling up again. "Thank God for you, Mr. Miller." She looked around his modest home, the worn couch, the Christmas lights Tommy had strung up, the warmth that seemed to fill every corner. She told me she felt loved here, Grace whispered. Like family. Jake smiled faintly. She's a special kid. She brought a lot of joy into our lives. Grace hesitated, then handed him an envelope. Please, let me repay you. You took care of my daughter when the world failed her. You deserve this. Jake shook his head firmly. Ma'am, I don't need your money. Anyone would have done the same. But Grace stared at him, stunned. No, most people wouldn't have. The next few days were quiet without Emily. Tommy missed her terribly, and even the house felt lonelier then. About a week later, a black car pulled up in front of Jake's house. Grace stepped out again, this time, not in a business suit but in jeans and a sweater. She smiled warmly. Mind if we come in? Emily jumped out of the car behind her, running to hug Jake and Tommy. Grace sat at the kitchen table inside. I've been thinking a lot about what you said about kindness. My whole life, I've been surrounded by people who only do things for money or recognition. But you helped my daughter just because it was the right thing to do. I want to live like that too. She paused, looking around. Anne? Emily won't stop talking about you and Tommy. I was wondering if we could stay for dinner? Jake smiled. Of course. We'd love that. That evening, laughter filled the little house again. Grace helped cook, Emily and Tommy built snowmen in the yard, and for the first time, Grace Caldwell, a woman who had everything, felt what true wealth really was: love, family, and kindness. Over the following months, Grace and Jake stayed in touch. She visited often, not as a billionaire, but as a friend. She donated anonymously to local schools, started volunteering at shelters, and even launched a foundation to help single parents, inspired by Jake's story. But one spring afternoon, Grace surprised Jake again. She stood on his porch with a shy smile and said, Jake, I was wondering, would you and Tommy like to come with us to the lake this weekend? Maybe make it a regular thing? Jake looked at her, this powerful woman who had every reason to move on, yet chose to stay connected, and felt his heart swell. He nodded, smiling. Yeah. I think we'd like that. As time went on, their bond deepened. It wasn't about wealth or background, it was about kindness, trust, and shared love for two children who'd become like siblings. The people in town would often see the four of them together: Grace, Jake, Tommy, and Emily, laughing, fishing, and just living life simply. And though they came from completely different worlds, they had found something that money could never buy: a family built from compassion. Sometimes kindness starts with a small choice: pulling over when others don't, offering warmth when it's easier to walk away. Jake didn't just save a little girl that night. He saved himself, and in a way, he helped a billionaire mother rediscover what truly matters, because at the end of the day, kindness isn't about wealth, status, or reward. It's about seeing someone's pain and choosing to care anyway. So, if you ever wonder whether your small act of kindness makes a difference, remember Jake, Emily, and Grace. A single moment of compassion can ripple through lives in ways you'd never imagine. Thanks for watching this story on TRUTHLINES USA. If this touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who could use a reminder that kindness still changes lives. Until next time, keep believing in good, and keep spreading kindness wherever you go.